Sir Michael Stoute has excelled at training racehorses for 6 decades, enjoying major success around the world. It therefore requires little explanation why the Bajan-born knight is the first subject of a new series on Racing TV. Racing Greats chronicles in conversation the achievements of some of the sport's legendary exponents in their chosen field. Of course, the 76-year-old Newmarket resident has much to look forward to this season, most imminently with likely Derby favourite Desert Crown. But when we sat down with Sir Michael early in 2022, it was for an opportunity to reflect on some of the most poignant, historic and memorable moments of his incredible career.
And the line, Shahrastani is a very easy winner. Ezzoud is the game performer.
Kris Kin will win the Derby. Harbinger won the Gordon Stakes. Workforce won the Investing Derby.
So Michael, thank you very much for agreeing to do this chat with Steve and I. We're starting a new series on Racing TV because we're a fan of a different genre, Steve and I, from the 70s, 80s, and we feel that we should be custodians to archive the memories of special racehorses so that people will always have reference to some of them. And looking through the records, you have got so many great horses to talk about, and we could obviously be here for weeks talking about them. But we tried to narrow it down to decades, and we're going to start with the 80s. And I obviously doff my cap to the likes of Persad and Shangamutso from that era. But first of all, the obvious horse to start with is the mighty Shergar. And your first memories of when you first set eyes on him and what you thought about him as a youngster.
Well, he was a medium-sized, 15-3, well-balanced, clean-limbed horse that, you know, you were very happy to train. I wouldn't say he was particularly outstanding as a yearling, but he had a lot of positives.
His early career was obviously quite, as a 2-year-old, he was obviously very precocious, seemingly. Obviously got beaten at Doncaster. But were you always confident that he was going to be better at 3?
Well, we were very confident when he went to the races for the first time at Newbury and did the job particularly well. He worked a little bit flat about a week before Doncaster. And Leicester, you know, he was a little worried. We couldn't see anything wrong with him and thought we should have a crack. He wasn't beaten by a bad horse.
Belldale Flutter?
But yes, he just lacked a little bit of bounce that day. Yeah. In the springtime, we were very happy because he had done particularly well physically. And 10 days before the classic trial at Sandown, he did an exceptionally good piece of work with a group winning 4-year-old. Right. So we went to Sandown very confident.
So many people talk about him as obviously the best horse you train. That Derby performance, clearly, I mean, when I mention it, Steve obviously immediately goes, because it's one that we all remember through history. What are your own memories and your own thoughts thinking back to that day?
Well, he didn't give one any anxious moments.
It's rare to say that for the Derby.
Yeah, we went there very confident. The thing is, he was a brilliant horse. He had it all: soundness, temperament. He did what you wanted him to do at home, and unfortunately, he had a 19-year-old on him. One of the most talented jockeys that's ever sat on a horse in this part of the world. And, you know, he wins 10 at Sandown and he wins 8 and choking at Chester. You know, you're using up a lot of petrol doing that. Funny enough, when Leicester won on him in the Irish Derby because Walter was suspended, you know, we had a little chat and he just won 4 lengths without coming off the bit. But that was, you know, a 19-year-old who became a great jockey, using up a little bit too much petrol.
Just tell me a little bit about, obviously the folklore tells the story of Walter sleeping in the car on the way to the races. Is that how it all transpired?
He wasn't driving, was he?
It's absolutely true. Got in the car and went to sleep.
Just because he was so relaxed, the occasion didn't bother him at all? Extraordinary, extraordinary. And the King George, yeah, that was also mightily impressive. What were your memories of that?
Well, he was intimidated by Greville and the King George, actually. He was stuck there with nowhere to go, and Leicester helped him out.
Were it not for that,
He might have got beaten.
it's always obviously disappointing that he finished by getting beaten in the Ledger, but overall, you think people are right to rate him as the best you've trained?
Best middle distance horse. Yes, he was. The Ledger was a very bad error on my part. Shouldn't have gone near the Ledger.
Do you mind if I ask why?
Because I made an error. I just thought, let's go. It's a classic, another important race. But they were watering it all through the week, and I was ringing the clerk of the course, and he was putting water. I should have taken him out on the day, but that would have been impossible. But I shouldn't have even contemplated the race. Error.
Rare.
No, more than you think.
But great. No, actually, Steve, I don't know if you wanted to carry on with Shergar, but there was another horse that I know carries quite a lot of memories for you from 81 as well.
The other end of the spectrum, we start off in the 80s, you had three really good sprinters, top class sprinters in Marwell, Green Desert, Ashdale. And Marwell was in 1981. All of them started their three-year-old campaign in classics. Well, they all ran in their guineas of their year. Marwell, you very quickly switched to sprinting afterwards. Just wonder what your memories of her were.
Oh yeah, she was just the most admirable filly. She proved to be in season after the 1000. And the owner was very keen, Edmund Loader, to pull her back to sprinting. I think she would have been fine over a mile. I really do, because she wasn't beaten far in the guineas, and she wasn't at her best. But she was the easiest filly in the world to train. Great limbs, wonderful temperament. She was an oil painting, really, and she was very good. Yes, she got beaten once or twice, but the sprinters do. It doesn't need for very much to go wrong, and. She held her form so well. I mean, she's finished up winning the Abbey.
Yeah, I mean, she ran in all the big sprints, didn't she? She ran, obviously, after the Guineas. She won the King's Stand.
July Cup. She did get a bit of catch-up, as you say. She was undeniably the best sprinter that year on balance of overall form.
Yeah, very good filly.
You had the two. Green Desert slightly different. I more want to talk about Ashdale really than Green Desert. But Green Desert ran into Dancing Brave in the Guineas, and you kept it a mile for a while, didn't you? Was he placed in the St James's Palace?
He was second then in the St James's
And then
Palace.
what made you again? It just looked a sprinter to you.
The speed he was showing here, we thought, we've got to drop him back.
I think Walter said after the Guineas, I may be misquoting him, I've never been going so well in the dip and been beaten by so far. Something like that. Because Dancing Brave took off in the fight with a pretty good
machine
horse.
beat him.
Yeah, absolutely. Ashdale's slightly different. And I got some great quotes from you from reading your quotes at the time about this. But Ashdale was favourite for the Guineas, ran pretty well, ran the Irish Guineas, and then went to the Derby. So at that stage, presumably, you're still thinking he was that sort of horse. It was an incredibly brave call to go 12 furlongs, 6 furlongs. I'd love to know what you're thinking about. That's when you had Shadid, you went back to a mile. This one, you went all the way back to 6. I'd be fascinated.
Yeah, because it was his homework.
Really?
What he was doing at home, and there we are, messed up with him.
Wow.
No, but what he was doing at home, we were very hopeful in the July Cup.
Did you have to train his training? What did you have, about 6 weeks between? That's something I really don't know about. Is there a different way of imparting speed?
Working them short and sharp.
Right. Because in the end, he was good enough to win at 5. He went to York and won at 5 furlongs. So he never ran badly as a mile. He was a very good horse at all distances. But he
won the Craven.
He won the Craven, beat the Guineas winner, Don't Forget Me.
Things didn't go quite right in the Guineas. I'm not saying he would have won. It would have been very close.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of mitigation. But he sort of woke up when we shortened him as well.
It's just such a big call. That's the thing. I mean, it's a brave call. I mean, 12 furlongs to 6, and it turned out
There's been
tremendous.
some bad calls.
Well, yeah, we all do.
But Steve just sort of touched on another horse in Shadid,
Yeah.
who he won the Guineas from Ben. Leicester rode him that day. I think Walter was suspended. And obviously he went to the Derby.
Yeah.
But then people talk about, again, folklore. People talk about one of the great training performances from the Derby to the Queen Elizabeth II without a run, drop back to a mile, and he wins. What was the thinking after the Derby that was the next step for him?
Well, it was a mistake to run him in the Derby. Was the thinking, and then he got a very bad skin infection, and he was actually turned out for a long time. He was in a mess.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we thought, well, we've got to go back to the distance that he won over, and yeah, he worked very impressively. He was bouncing and on top of his game again. He was very, very smart horse. He was an unlucky horse in the Breeders' Cup because he was drawn on the wide outside, and it was at Aqueduct, and he hit the gate from the outside draw, and he nearly didn't get round the first bend. He gave them about half a furlong.
Yeah. Sonic Lady is I loved her through the 80s. She obviously campaigned for a long time. She was very genuine, seemingly, and I love the fact that she was one of those. Generally, she travelled kindly in a push button.
She actually used to travel
too well.
Yeah. Even Walter couldn't get her fully switched off, and Greville said this filly is the most brilliant 7 furlong animal I've ever been near to. But races were over a mile, weren't they? But she did well to win some of those mile races because she used up a bit of petrol in the early stages. She was strong and a bully.
She had a great CV at the end. She didn't half win some races.
Of course, but that was because of her talent.
Yeah.
She was winning these mile races. Yeah.
She had a couple of goes at the Breeders' Cup as well, didn't she? She got placed on her second attempt at the Breeders' Cup.
The first time I think she's just a bit over the top, a little bit greedy to go there, and then a machine beat her when she was a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
She was third, but I think she should have been second, and she needed knowing, and I had one of the great jockeys on her, Pink Eye, but she needed knowing. Walter would have finished second on her.
I remember her winning the Irish Guineas, and the field spread, because I think there was a huge field for that particular Irish Guineas, and I remember the image of her having travelled quite keenly enough in the early part of the race, and a furlong and a half out, she's still running away almost. I mean, just some engine that she had.
Very classy.
Going through the 80s again, Shahrastani, your next Derby winner, often remembered wrongly, I think, for what happened to Dancing Brave. I'm talking about this, but I want you to tell me about the Irish Derby after, where he was really impressive.
Well, I think he really peaked for the Irish Derby, and I remember it was a hideous day. It was just so hot, and he won 11 lengths. He used up a lot of petrol that day and in the heat, and we thought he'd recovered well enough, but he hadn't really.
For the King George. I wondered that because despite all the people talking at the time, and Dancing Brave was a great horse, but saying how unfortunate they were, when they got to the King George, because of what you did in the Irish Derby, you were actually favourite for the King George, and he definitely didn't run to his best that day, did he? Was he fourth in the end? He wasn't second, so he was, he was certainly.
Shahdari was second.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So, but where would he rank in terms of at the time? Because going through to the trials, he was very impressive, wasn't he? He looked a very straightforward horse. Would that be fair?
Very, sound horse, wonderful temperament, faultless. You need a few more like him. He was no trouble at all.
Yeah.
But I think we should have left the King George alone.
He didn't run too badly in the arc, did he? I mean, and that was one of the great.
How far was he beaten?
Not
very far.
Yeah.
In a great arc. Really.
Dancing Brave. Shahdari was also in that.
Yeah.
Triptyque. So many. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Serious race.
Yeah.
That was one of the all-time great races. I'm so excited to talk to you about this horse.
His personal
So
favourite.
Steve and I, we often bicker about best milers.
We've seen.
And I always tell him the best miler was Zilzal. So he defers to me on this one. I mean, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. And up to now, one of the most regretful memories in racing for me is when he got beaten in the Breeders' Cup. But his progression, just tell me a little bit about how quickly he progressed through his 3-year-old season.
Well, he was a very difficult horse, temperamentally, as a 2-year-old. And it took a long time to get his mind right. And Tommy did a great job. He looked after him and rode him. And once he settled and realised what we wanted of him, he showed you how good he was, and he continued to do it. And the Breeders' Cup was a disaster because that went wrong in the stalls.
Yeah.
They were jabbing him and revved him up, and he got left and went the long way round. He got beat 2 lengths. He's the best miler I've ever had.
Thank you.
No doubt.
Well, he's brilliant in the Sussex, wasn't he? And brilliant in the QE2. Brilliant in them. He beat. Am I right in saying Warning and horses like that were taking him on? Was it Warning?
Warning.
Well, they were good horses. He
In
was
the
beating
Sussex,
easily,
I think.
wasn't he?
Polish Precedent
Yeah.
in the
The QE2.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
He was brilliant in
I
those
don't
2
think
runs.
they were expecting Polish Precedent to be beaten
No.
that day.
I mean, he was brilliant at Ascot.
And he did it impressively.
He did.
Comfortably beat him.
He did.
Machine. I would have loved to have trained him as a 4-year-old.
We've sort of picked out a few from the 80s.
Yeah.
I think it's just worth giving a list of horses that we are not specifically talking about through the 80s, just to highlight how many good horses that you had. There's Bella Calora, Unite, Untold, Sally Brown, Doyun, Sheriff Dancer, Musical Bliss, Milligram. I mean, we could go on. Shardy, yeah. I mean, the list is enormous from the...
Any special memories for any of those?
Shahrastani Dancers was a very serious horse.
Sheriff, yeah.
Yeah. He got beaten in a handicap at Sandown first time as a 3-year-old. And I think he was one of the first horses we had an endoscope to check him with. And he was full of mucus. So we had to get all that cleansed and sorted out. And then he came out and he won the King Edward.
Yeah.
But that just tuned him up for the Irish Derby.
Yeah.
And it was a very good Irish Derby. And he won it by 4 lengths, hands and heels, a bit left in the tank. And he beat Jeff Frags' Derby winner.
Tinoso.
Tinoso.
Yeah, he did. What we after? Did he? How did it go with him after the Derby? What was?
Well, then the plan was to go to the Juddmonte, which I
Yeah.
don't think was the Juddmonte at the time.
Was it Benson the Hedge was still...
Yeah.
May have been, And it rained. I walked the track. I was happy, but Sheikh Maktoum wasn't. I think they had some negative press. He'd cost 3-odd million at Keenan as a yearling, and I think they were very nervous of getting him beaten once he'd performed and shown everybody how good he was, and he justified the purchase price and more. And then again, we could try to get him ready for the Arc, and they decided they didn't want to run him again.
Right. But Irish Derby was his
But
day,
there
wasn't
was
it?
nothing wrong with him, and it was a pity.
Yeah.
But that was the thinking at the time.
One other horse from the 80s. Musical Bliss gave you your
Yeah,
first
first
Guinness win. Again, Walter took... I just wanted to get your memories, because I remember when the gates opened that day, everyone was sort of looking around to see who's going to do what, and Walter took the bull by the horns.
Yeah.
And produced a superb ride.
Yes, it was a good Guineas and some good fillies, and she wasn't necessarily the best of them in that, but Walter showed a lot of initiative and he pinched the race.
And after the frustration of, the likes of Bella Calora, etc., getting placed in the races, it's always nice to get that one on the board in the Guineas.
Yeah, we'd had a lot of seconds, and
Close second. Bella Calora was very close.
Yeah.
That was that 3-way photo.
she
they
was
so
actually
sharp.
third.
Yeah.
I think it was short.
Yeah,
That's
she
right.
was,
It was,
yeah.
Oh So Sharp, Bella Calora, Albahathri.
Albahathri, yeah. Pretty good Guinness again.
It wasn't too
You can be unlucky the year you're born, can't you? You can be very unlucky the year you're born. You know, there were two good fillies who you were battling it out with. One of the outstanding thing about the 90s was how we concentrate on your older horses. We're going to talk about a few, but if we could just start with Persad and Singspiel. They came at the same time, but I think if most people were saying a typical Sir Michael Stoute horse nowadays, they're talking about horses like this who get better as they get older and turn, you know, into really good 3, 4, 5-year-olds in their case. They were at the same time, weren't they? They must have been fascinating to compare.
Yeah, they were very different. And any trainer, he enjoys training classic horses at 4, at 5, and especially if you have owners that have allowed you to be patient with them initially. Yeah. And, you know, they were big improvers.
The education of both those horses, I mean, obviously we watch it as fans or members of the media and we kind of read into it. Oh, so Michael sent Singspiel to Chester to teach him something, because he went to Chester on his second run. And I remember thinking to myself, he's going to learn a lot from this experience. And obviously on his next start, he ended up bumping into Celtic Swing at Ascot. So, but the thing is, I mean, I've always wanted to know, is there that sort of plan of plotting to run at a racecourse for education, or are you just going race by race and feeling your way with these horses?
Well, what do you expect me to say? I'm going to say I was clever and...
Well, ideally, yeah. But I mean, obviously, we get to learn patterns, etc., and we kind of think, that's what you're doing.
Yeah, but the suitability of races on the ground, that comes into the equation as well. But yeah, you've got to think ahead if you think you have a classy horse.
You said they're very different, which I was always saying, and it's interesting. Persad was clearly the more backward. It wasn't, you know, anything special at 2, and very much jumped forward as a 4-year-old. But they ended up winning very similar races.
Yes.
That's the point.
Well, but they were fully mature.
Yeah.
But Singspiel was medium size, quite mature horse. Pilsudski was big, raw, a real Ballymacall type that needed a lot of time. Both of them had great minds. That's so important.
Yeah. But to last as long as they did, and you
The
travelled all over
soundness
the world.
and their temperament.
Yeah.
They travelled a bit.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about international racing and the list of victories that they had in a sort of 18-month spell on the international two
And
Japan
Singspiel got
Cups.
unlucky because he didn't get a Breeders' Cup. He was 2 to 1 on, and 2 days before he got a fracture.
Yeah.
But
on
of
the
course,
track.
the Breeders' Cup the year before in Canada gave you Walter, and I think it was, if I remember correctly, quite a poignant moment for the Ballymacall team. Simon Weinstock had passed away.
Absolutely.
I mean, that must have been one of the best memories, wouldn't it?
It was, well, yes, and also I started going to the Breeders' Cup in 84 or 5, 80, whatever, the second year, and I didn't win one till 96. So that was very special, that Breeders' Cup.
Yeah.
To be fair, you weren't alone. It took a lot of the British, European trainers a while to work out how to do it, didn't it? I mean, you know, we mentioned earlier, Dancing Brave bobbed in the Breeders' Cup, didn't he?
Yeah, things have got to go right.
Yeah.
After these long journeys.
Yeah.
Just about the Dubai World Cup with Singspiel, because that was the year where I think on the day of the race, Sheikh Mohammed did the line across the throat because the meeting was going to be off.
Yes, the rain wouldn't stop falling. They would have had to swim.
Yeah. But that was, again, a tremendous thrill to win the Dubai World. I mean, the previous year was Cigar had won it first time, Singspiel in the second edition. That was a very important race for Sheikh Mohammed to get that victory.
Yes, it was. And for all of us.
And to win on dirt as well.
I was going to ask, but Singspiel on dirt, was that just, you know, you're going to find out on the day, or any indication beforehand?
Well, I sent him there 2 months before.
Okay.
He'd had a lot of practice, and Greville was there riding him. We were pretty happy that he would handle the surface. But the opposition was tough, and we didn't underrate it. Mandela had 2 very good horses.
Sandpit and Siphon, the
Sandpit.
two, all the S's in that race. I remember that. But that, you know, talking about how important it is for people to remember these great horses, to win the Dubai World Cup, to win the Japan Cup. I mean, this is just Singspiel. You know, obviously Canadian International, Juddmonte International, etc. It's a phenomenal record that, you know, makes these horses. You know, they're going to be remembered for a very long time.
Yeah, it should be. Yeah.
I think longevity and is a really
It was
underrated
such a joy
thing.
to train. You know, they had Paula and Mick. You know, great horse people.
Yeah.
And the TLC they had. You know, you need all of that too.
Yeah.
Big team involved. One of the horses in the early 90s who was, again, took his time to get going at the top level, but Opera House. Again, you know, the year that he won, was it the Eclipse, the King George? I mean, he was terrific in that spell. But as a mature horse again, would that be fair?
Yes, he improved. He improved. I don't think he beat champions either, but he was a delightful horse to have around. Very easy horse to train. Wonderful temperament, soundness.
Did he have a problem early, Sir Michael? Because he won very impressively as a 2-year-old in his debut, Leicester or somewhere,
yeah.
and then you didn't see him again until September. So presumably was he just growing or?
He'd had a little niggle,
Right.
but I can't remember what it
But,
was.
but to be fair, he ran several times after that, didn't he? He clearly was over it.
Yeah.
Was it 30 years ago?
Yeah, it's just about, yeah, it's true.
But would he have had a similar sort of mind to the likes of Singspiel and Pinsowski in that, you know, easy to train?
That fella, yeah.
The
Great
other
outlook.
The other one we picked out was Ezzoud as an older, another.
I'm looking forward to hearing what you say about his mind.
Well, again, he got better and better though, didn't he? I mean, again, his figures are incredible as he got older.
We loved him.
Now,
We loved him. What was the horse he beat in the Juddmonte?
Sabre Hill
yeah.
Sabre Hill.
of Henry's.
Yeah.
Who when he quickened up, the race looked over at, I think, about 2 furlongs out. Michael Roberts sent him on, and he put some good distance between himself and the field. You didn't think Ezzoud was going to peg him back, did you?
Not at that stage, no.
I
No.
didn't either, as a fan of Ezzoud. I thought, there's no chance he's going to pick this horse up. I was shocked when he reeled him in. But he was actually, on his day, when he was up for it, would that be a fair way of describing it? On his day, and he was up for it, he was top class.
Look, he didn't want to be getting there too early, that sort of thing. He had his little idiosyncrasies, but he was honest. He just was a character. And I remember the morning of that Juddmonte, at the chalk pit, Mace Roberts got off a horse and was going back through the trees to his car, and one of my lads just said, When our fella comes at you inside the final furlong, you're going to be very frightened because he's going to beat you.
He's right. Well, for all these funny things,
I didn't think before the race he would beat.
but 2 internationals and an Eclipse. I mean, can hardly knock him as a record. It's a tremendous record.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to call the list of horses out
Oh,
again
they're ridiculous.
From the 90s that
Yeah, go on.
we're not going into any great depth about. But there's a Guineas winner in Entrepreneur. There's Gay Galante, who won the Cheveley Park. Sadler's Hall, Coronation Cup. Lover's Knot, Exclusive. Soviet Line, another particular favourite of mine.
Yeah, good.
Stagecraft. There's Rockhopper, Among Men, Cezanne, Howard Geese. You know, is there anything that in that list that we mentioned?
I love Soviet Line. I thought Soviet Line was a really top-class horse.
Yeah, he won, 2 lock-ins?
Yeah.
Tough and honest. Delightful horses to train,
Yeah.
you know.
Is it a case of the horses are tough? You can't put toughness into a horse. When people say about training, etc., it's entirely down to the raw material. It's not something that...
Yeah, but I think some horses, you know, the person that does them and the person that rides them, they make good contributions towards ironing horses out.
Should we move on and talk about horses in the noughties?
Yeah, great. Gets better.
Yes, it keeps getting better. Should we start with a couple of Derby winners from the noughties? And Kris Kin, first of all. Now, the Derby ride that he got is widely regarded as one of the best by Kieran Fallon. What are your thoughts on?
Well, I think I said so publicly and got criticised, you know. But it was actually because his timing was utter perfection to go and get the opening that he got. It was a brilliant ride.
And he wasn't a push-button horse, was he?
No.
He could be lazy.
No.
Would it be fair to say?
No, he was tough and he stayed well.
Am I allowed to mention that he was in the Derby, wasn't in the Derby?
Yeah.
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 I mean, it's a long time ago, so it's all right.
Yeah. Well, we took him out of the Derby.
What had happened?
I didn't think he was good enough. And anyway, what happened next? He had to go back in the Derby after he won at Chester. Got rid of the jockey after he passed the post.
Fergal Lynch, absolutely. There was always a story with Kris Kin, wasn't there? There was always something happening with him. I remember you said about the Derby.
He was interesting.
He was very. I thought the start of the Derby from Kieran. I thought the start of the Derby, Kieran was fabulous. He almost bullied his way into a good position because again he wasn't like an ultra smooth traveller, and he really made an effort to take a position. You know, at the start of Tatnam Corner. It was a masterful ride.
I can't remember the first part, but I remember coming down the hill and seeing what he had in mind, and I thought it was a brilliant ride, and I thought there was disagreement from somebody quite prominent.
I can't imagine anyone looking back on that ride would disagree that it was...
Anyhow.
No, looked like a slightly different Derby.
Somebody that didn't like Kieran.
Maybe, but that day was great. North like a slightly more... probably similar standard in many ways, but maybe a more acceleration. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, bit more of a kick on him.
Yeah, and he won the Dandy, didn't he, in good style on his seasonal reappearance?
He won the Dante. Yeah, he nearly got beaten. He dropped his hands a little too quickly, and he nearly got caught. But yeah, he was a horse with lovely mind. Typical Ballymacall horse, great temperament and sound.
There are a couple of horses from this particular era, which the Ballymacall horses, who were good 3-year-olds that turned into very good older horses as well. I mean, I know that's a familiar theme through your training career, but I'll pick up a couple. Golan, who of course won the Guineas. I think he'd won at Chepstow on his only run as a 2-year-old, and then the Guineas first time up. Had he shown you between 2 and 3 that he was?
We were very hopeful, and Kieran was quite confident he'd win the Guineas. He was a good, solid horse. He was a good, solid horse. It wasn't a good Guineas.
Bumped into a very good horse in the Derby as well. You bumped into Galileo, didn't you?
True.
Yeah. And you say Conduit was the other horse?
Conduit was the other one. Special
place in your heart. Won the Ledger after many near misses.
A very admirable horse.
Yeah.
Very admirable horse.
The Breeders' Cup Turf, he won.
No, he won two Breeders' Cups.
Cup Turf twice. He won the King, but he won the King George when he had a 1-2-3.
Yes.
Which was a rare achievement. But
I love the first Breeders' Cup that he won.
Why that one?
It went very fast, and Ryan was very cool and showed brilliance. He was very young at the time too.
Yeah. That was Ryan's first Breeders' Cup win, wasn't it?
I would think so. First Breeders' Cup
win.
Probably his first Breeders' Cup
Yeah,
ride.
actually, yeah. But yeah, because he always seemed a very tough horse,
very sound. Great mind, could travel the world, not bother.
That is a familiar thing with all the horses that you mentioned who travel.
Well, there are a lot that don't.
Yeah, of course. Mention one that talk about King's Best in that area. I've always thought he's almost a horse we never got to see exactly how good he might have been, because he was a brilliant winner of the Guineas from a good Guineas.
A very good Guineas, and the acceleration he showed,
Tremendous.
It was outstanding. And Kieran was very confident because he felt he'd made a mistake in the Craven and he wasn't going to make it again. And he was a very smart horse on Guineas Day.
You stepped up to the Irish Derby next. I remember talking to you before Workforce Run. I know we'll talk about Workforce later, but before Workforce Run the Derby, I was having a chat with you and asking about whether he'd say a mile and a half, and you were saying King's Best, German family, he'll definitely stay. But effectively, I mean, you were very confident to stay, and you were confident King's Best would have stayed himself. But it all went wrong. He injured himself in the Irish Derby, didn't he?
Yeah, he fractured.
Yeah. I mean, how good might he? I know we never. This is pure game, but he looked like he really was a potential proper star. I think.
Well, look, it wasn't a fluke in the 2000.
Yeah.
But then he started to give trouble temperamentally.
Okay.
And he became quite difficult, and we had some anxious moments. We were trying to run in England, but he had a setback.
Yes.
So we were aiming at the Curragh, and his mind worried me.
Okay.
But he had a lot of talent.
Actually, looking through.
But he wouldn't have gone.
Interesting.
That far, he wouldn't have. No.
So the Guinness was his day, really. You think the day he showed his true brilliance was the Guinness?
Well, it was the only real opportunity he had to show his true brilliance, and he did show it, but he didn't run again after that.
Yeah.
Well, because he broke down at the Curragh.
Yeah.
But we were having problems.
You mentioned Kieran, and I'll just tell the story of the time that I went to interview Kieran before Petrushka was running in the Guineas the same year, and obviously that was on the Sunday, and it was only for a Sunday newspaper I was interviewing him for. So I said to Kieran, what about Petrushka's chances in the Guineas? And he said, she's got a very good filly, she'll run well, etc. And as I was walking away, he said, are you not going to ask me about King's Best? So I said, oh no, it's for the Sunday paper. So he goes, do you want to know about King's Best? I said, yes, of course I do, on a personal level. And he said, well, I think he'll win the Guineas. I said, but you just got beaten you missed him in the Craven. I don't see that. And he said, I made a mistake. I thought he was a bit of a grinder because he used to make all the running as a 2-year-old. Then in the Craven, I pressed the button and he actually took off and he showed a turn of foot, and I didn't realise that he possessed that. He said, I'm going to ride him differently in the Guineas. And what transpired in the Guineas was outstanding. Visually, it's probably one of the most satisfying things to watch. He was last at the Bushes, you were saying.
Yeah. And Kieran came back and he said, I'm coming to ride him out every morning. I just need to get to know him a little bit better. It's only 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And is a sort of professional Kieran is.
Yeah.
Didn't mess about. He said, we'll win the Guineas. He was very confident. I wasn't at the Bushes. I couldn't see a horse behind him. I thought, geez.
Well, and then he ran into a bit of trouble as well. He had to check, and it's quite an outstanding performance.
Yeah, and it was Giant Causeway chasing him home. Again, you can only judge horses by who they beat, and he beat a very good field. Cannonese is another older horse we talked about, which again did fantastic for you. You took over that from Luca, didn't you, at the end of its 3-year-old campaign? And I mean, was it Queen? You ended up winning in America with that horse.
Yes, I remember. Gary Stevens, who we'd got to know very well, he came and rode. I thought he was going to be here for at least a season, but he got cut short. He got pulled back to America. I said to Gary Stevens, I said, I want you to walk the track with Johnny the morning of the race. And in those days, the racing started about 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Probably still does on Breeders' Cup Day. And there's a photograph there of Gary's already organised to go and ride his 10:30 horse. Anyway, we're walking the track, and at the top of the straight, Gary says, now this is a long straight. This is a long way in. Okay? And Johnny comes back in, and I think he was interviewed, and they said, well, what did you think? What do you think? He said, well, yeah, I thought the race was going fine. My horse was travelling. I was very happy. But he says, when we straightened up, I just said, I hope this bloody straight is as long as Gary Stevens says it is.
Oh, God, I can hear Johnny saying that now. Yeah. Cannonese bumped into Giant's Causeway a couple of times, narrowly losing out in the Eclipse and the Juddmonte International.
Yeah.
But finally got his day in the sun towards the end of the season in the Champions Stakes. Beat Mangeur that day.
Yes. He was a very good colt, Calanese. I mean,
You must have got pleasure out of him. He was the son of Doyoun, wasn't he? Obviously, one of your Guinness Win.
Guinness
That must be
winner.
nice to have family members which you've
yeah,
had over the years.
it is. But he was a nice horse to have anything to do with Calanese.
Yeah.
We're going to go through the list again.
The list of other horses
from this particular decade. Russian Rhythm, Islington, Not Now Cato, Favourable Terms, No Excuse Needed, Regal Rose, Fantastic Light, Medition, Red Bloom, Mountain High, Spanish Moon, Allegretto, Promising Lead, Quiff.
Nothing boring about it, I can assure you. But
One of those is quite, again, talking about racing folklore and races that people remember, was that Not Now Cato in the Eclipse, beating Authorised, and Ryan coming over to the stand side by himself. When did that plan, when was it hatched, or was that all Ryan, or had you had a chat with him at all?
Oh yeah, we'd had a chat, and he went and walked it and was very keen to do it. Because we've often come on that stand side at Sandown over the years, and it looked to be a possibility, and he walked it, and he said he was confident that's what he was going to do.
I thought Fantastic Light was does deserve an honourable mention, because just the whole chunk of races, again, all over the place that he won. He was you were talking about horses being hardy. He was a hardy horse, wasn't he?
Yeah, wonderful temperament, and just did enough. You know. He won 2-year-old races unimpressively, but he was winning them.
Yeah.
I loved him. Loved it. He was a handsome horse, beautiful conformation, and he loved to go to work, but he didn't want to work harder than he needed to, which is intelligent.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want them too intelligent, though.
I like the sound of him. Russian Rhythm and Islington were two fillies that I loved following.
Yeah, two very special fillies. Brilliant, quality animals, great limbs, attitude, easy to train. They did what you wanted them to do.
And very good over a period of seasons. Russian Rhythm was a very good 2-year-old, and she won the Lock-in Jet 4. Obviously, Islington, she took on the boys a few times. And
won 2 Nassaus.
Yeah. Breeders' Cup.
Hardly ever disappointed.
She was tough as nails. She was a bit unlucky in the Breeders' Cup at Arlington.
Yeah.
And then she put it right at Santa Anita. Or Kieran put it right at Santa Anita.
2010 onwards?
Yes.
We'll start with your Derby winner, Workforce, and Arc winner, which is very important. But Workforce, it didn't all go completely smoothly in the build-up to the Derby. Was it the bit went through the mouth in the Dante, or something happened? I know.
Yeah, that wasn't a major blip, but we felt it cost him the race, and everybody sort of rather wrote him off. And I gave him a good gallop at Lingfield about 10 days before the Derby. It was a proper piece of work, and Ryan said, "We'll win the Derby." Wow. He took off that morning. He went there in great shape, and he did the business.
And some in style as well.
Yeah, and in a good time. He never repeated a performance of that calibre again.
No, I think that's fair.
It was the quickest Derby. Certainly he broke Lamtara, had the previous record, and he beat it by a second. I'm going to spare Steve's blushes here. When he ran first time, was at Goodwood Workforce. I remember what I was watching, Racing UK as it was back in those days. And Steve and Nick were working at that day, and both of them were taken by the horse. But I remember you saying that this is a Derby horse then.
He beat something pretty useful.
He did. God, I've gone blank. It was a good three. It turned out to be a good 3-year-old as well. He was a good horse. He did it. He took my memory of the race. He took an age to pull up afterwards as well. He went all the way down to as far as you can go at Goodwood, and he was still tanking seemingly.
Yeah. He's just getting into gear inside the last furlong.
But so he thinks it wasn't his best in the King George. I know you won the race, but then you must have been really pleased to see him win the Arc. It's nice to have in your CV an Arc winner, isn't it?
Oh yeah, we'd had a lot of horses run very well.
Yeah.
you know, and it was a delight to, and he showed a lot of resilience that day.
He did. Maybe not the same brilliant, but he was gutsy
No,
that day.
but
He could have
brilliant.
lost, couldn't he?
He was tough, workmanlike.
Yeah. Older horse, Harbinger, as I said to you talking earlier, time form, in their view of all the horses that we've been talking about, have him your equal best. They have him 140, same as Shergar. And that will be based on his, quite brilliant performance in the King George.
Quite brilliant. I mean, he came out as a 4-year-old and he did the business in rather workmanlike fashion, but he kept doing it and improving a little bit each time. And then he seemed to really peak before the King George because Olivier came and rode him work a week before and said, "This will win. He will win." And it was a pretty good-looking King George on paper. We were very hopeful he'd win. But they straightened up and you're looking around and he's still on the bridle.
Yeah.
Still on the bridle. It was no fluke. He was magnificent that day.
Would he have carried on improving? That's the last we ever saw of him, wasn't it?
Well,
in your view, I know you don't know.
I don't think you could have expected any more improvement.
No,
I mean,
okay, no, fair enough.
What did he run to that day?
Well, time from say 140, which is an extremely rarefied air.
You sure it wasn't 41?
He'd eased half a length.
But that was an exhilarating performance.
What went wrong after that? 'Cause he didn't run again, did he?
Yeah, well, he did a piece of work on the lime kilns, and he just got a little injury. It wasn't too serious, but they decided let's get straight while they are, and so he's just won 10 lengths.
A major success for you in this era came in the Gold Cup with Estimate, which I would imagine, and obviously I'm only putting words in your mouth, but it must have been a very satisfying moment as a trainer to produce a Gold Cup winner in those colours at the Royal Meeting.
Yes, because I didn't know it, but she said afterwards that was a race that she most wanted to win at Royal Ascot.
Is that right?
Yeah. So it was nice doing that.
Estimate was she was so tough. I mean, she had to be tough to win a Gold Cup, but Ryan asked her a big question and she was so genuine. Again, straightforward, mind-wise, was she always that type of horse? Or?
Oh, yes. No real brilliance, but tough. She toughed it out on a few occasions.
Given there was more than 30 years between your two Gold Cup winners, Shangamuzo was your first.
Yes.
Does that mean we can expect another one in sort of?
The best one was second. He was a Weinstock horse.
Oh.
He was second
To Yates?
to Yates.
Yeah.
Pat Kai.
He was the best cup horse I ever
Was he?
had.
Was
Really?
he interesting?
There was a stage in that race. He damaged his tendon in that race.
Was that the year Yates won it for the fourth time?
I don't know which
I
time
think,
it
yeah,
was,
yeah.
but Yates won it. And I thought, oi,
Yeah.
let's have it. Go on, have a go at him. You might get there. He was a very good staying horse, the best I've had.
Yeah.
Being repetitive.
Steve and I have spoken about training cup horses, and you obviously you spoke to Henry about how he trained stayers.
Yeah, I asked him about because he had a series of great stayers, as you know, Ardross and several. And I asked him, did he do much? I mean, he said he never used to train them more than 7 furlongs. That was he didn't used to particularly find out. Were you the same?
Yeah, very seldom work them beyond 7 furlongs. You might give them the occasional mile or 9 furlong work, but it's fitness that matters. They've got the stamina.
Would it be a feel for it, like you just feel they're going to stay, or that and breeding?
Well, they've told you before. You know, they'll let you know if you've gone along.
Yeah. Yes. I'm old enough to remember Shangamuzo, and that started off under sort of a 1.5 handicap, didn't it? Originally, it got better and better the further he went. I know it's a long time ago now.
Yeah. Good old Shahrastani.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah, absolutely. Other horses from this era?
Again,
This is very silly.
I mean, there's Dream of Dreams, who's one of the most recent ones, but there are other older horses like Ulysses, Poet's Word and Crystal Ocean, who kind of sort of emulated Singspiel and Pilsudski being around
And
at
they
the
were
same
solid.
time.
Over the bump.
Mustachery, Expert Eye, I might come back to him, Integral, Hillstar, Cannock Chase, Dank, Queen's Trust, Eqtidar, and the list goes on. But Expert Eye, I remember him winning as a 2-year-old.
Yes.
Everyone thought...
Goodwood.
Yeah.
Everyone, including me. Yeah,
Wow,
we thought he was very special. And then he had a problem in the stalls in the Dewhurst. And that really set him back. We spent all spring trying to get him reorganized with the stalls.
Wow.
And the boys did a great job.
So he definitely came back with a sort of gradual renaissance towards the end of the season. And then Breeders' Cup.
Yeah.
What was your...
He'd run some good races before the Breeders' Cup. That's where he went.
It was Frankie aboard in the Breeders' Cup, wasn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
You've had been associated with every top jockey at various... I mean, Leicester rode a lot for you. Obviously, Walter, Kieran, Pat Edery, Willie at some, Gary Stevens. One of the things I was really struck by is that there was a quote I read for you about Greville Starkey, who rode your first Classic winner in 1978 and then worked for you for a number of years after he retired. And you said of all the jockeys, he was the best judge of any horse who rode them. Would that be right? That your memory?
Without a doubt.
Really?
He was a brilliant judge. He was a brilliant horseman. He annoyingly would not practice enough with his left hand, because I don't see why he shouldn't have been very effective with his left hand, but he didn't just like doing it. He had a blank there. But he was a most... he was the most beautiful work rider as well, and judge. Very talented man. I was so lucky to have him early in my career, and that Guy had him organised, and he then got busier and busier with Guy as Guy got more successful and in larger stable. But I got Grev then when he retired, and he did great jobs for us. Went overseas with Japan Cup horses and Breeders' Cup horses, and he was just a joy to have. Such a knowledgeable man and a very underrated rider. You know, it was sad because that 86 Derby set him back enormously.
Unfairly in some ways as well, don't you think? I mean, not every horse goes down the hill at Epsom.
Exactly. And you see him even coming down the hill and he's squeezing him, you know.
To get a position,
But he was a very good horse. He took off when he straightened.
Yeah, he was a very good judge. But he was a good judge of how far a horse would stay and things like that, was he?
Brilliant.
As good as you had.
The best.
Yeah, that's nice. That is nice.
In 81, obviously, Walter became stable jockey for you. Would it be right to say that he was the best on the big day in terms of temperament?
Those top jocks are all pretty good. But he was very calm. He had the most beautiful hands. Nobody got a horse to settle better than he did, maybe as well. So, but it just came a little too early, and that was not my plan, because I'd got Leicester in 1980 because he'd fallen out with everybody. Henry, Jeremy Tree, go down the line. He didn't. So he started coming round to me to have a drink. He didn't drink very much. And I wanted, what do you want? I didn't realise he'd fallen out with everybody. But then I did. So it started, and then he drove me mad. He got beat on a horse here. It was hanging, and he dropped his hands. And it was one of the Argos, beautifully bred filly. The Argo had come over to see her win, And Leicester came in and the crowd were booing and he went straight into the weighing room, didn't even speak to the Arga. So I rang him and I started giving him a bollocking and he slammed the phone down. Then the next morning he drove round and we'd just had some chippings, a cheap job done on the drive at Beechhurst, right? These loose chippings.
Yeah.
So he comes in, boom, explains himself, says, look, I'm here, you told me, I said, if you mess around, Leicester, and mess about, it'll be the last time you ride work, right? I won't tolerate that. So anyway, so you told me to come, so he was happy with all that. So then I walk out and he puts the window down, this little sports Jag he had. And he said, next time you're feeling like that, you lock yourself in the toilet for half an hour. And with that, he came off the grid and the chickens are hitting me in the face on the arms.
That was the end of it.
So, yeah, for 81, these nice horses were coming up, hard, sugar, and I think all is well, and all of a sudden there's commotion. Joe Mercer's leaving Warren Place, this, but... Well, I'd got Swinburne to come on a small retainer to be second call to what Leicester couldn't ride. So I felt I was beautifully organised. And then Peter Warwin wanted Swinburne, so they were happy with that. They wanted, because he was going to ride all of them. So I had to have another strategy. So he came in and he got on them all a little bit too early, 19.
But you enjoyed some great days with him, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Would the Breeders' Cup that Pilsudski won, because obviously Walton had that fall in Hong Kong before it, would that be one of the most sort of memorable or important occasions in terms of successes?
Well, I thought it was a very big day because it was driving me mad, that Breeders' Cup. So it was big. Simon had died, and it was a big boost for Lord Weinstock, who I so adored training for. Oh, the phone conversations, you'd pay for them. And you couldn't repeat some of them. Libelous, not...
Okay. Against everybody.
Didn't mess about.
We're just going through some of the other jockeys to have ridden for you. I mean, obviously, Pat.
Yeah, I mean, so gifted, brilliant. You know, we were, look, if you have nice horses, the nice horses will attract good jockeys.
Yeah.
And Pat had some arrangement with Maktoum.
That's right.
Right?
Maktoum.
Maktoum.
Yeah.
So he was involved with them, but we were always happy to put Pat out.
Gary Stevens came for a short time, didn't he?
Too short.
Yeah. But do you think that would have been... Would you like that to have been longer? Do you think that would have worked out well?
Yeah. Oh, yes. I was hoping it would. I was hoping it would. Very talented. Very talented. He adapted so quickly. But he went to Hong Kong. A lot of jockeys, they go to Hong Kong and they get muddled for about 3 months, right?
Yeah.
And then they either lose all their punters and go home, or they kick on when they've adapted a bit. He went there and he started winning, having a treble on the first day he rode there. It was his success rate was phenomenal in Hong Kong, Gary. He could go... Then his knees started to give him trouble, and he messed about for too long, really.
Kieran Fallon, when he took, because he took over from Gary, didn't he? I remember I remember a quote from you, and I hope I got this right, that when Kieran started riding for you, I believe Walter rang and said what you would give for a jockey to have Walter's hands and Kieran's legs. Is that the correct?
That's what Swinburne said.
Yeah. Would that be perfection? Walter's hands and Kieran's legs, unless there's driving of a short jab.
Look, all great talents, but He didn't lack a sense of humour, did Swinburne.
That came, the Kieran came about with there's lots of fallouts in racing, isn't there? It happens historically, you know, owners or trainers fall out with jockeys, and he came after being with Henry for a while, didn't he? Kieran.
Yeah, but I'd used him a bit in the north, and he wrote some winners for me, and I liked what I heard from him. You know, he was a horse lover. And then Henry, I don't know who told Henry about him. Next minute he was retained by Henry. Yeah. I said, hey, Henry, you know, that fella, whoever enlightened you about him that he rode up the north. But he was always shrewder than he let on, Henry. He didn't miss much, really. No. Pretend. There we are.
What were his qualities, do you think, Kieran's mainly?
Horses ran for Kieran. Whew. And he was the deepest thinker and planner. And people didn't realise that. He was totally dedicated. All right, he could be a little reckless every now and again and not get to bed early enough, but it usually didn't make any difference. It was as hard as nails. But a serious talent and the form and how a race would be run. Mm. Yeah. Tell me, that'll be there, and I'll sit there on his backside, bam, bam, bam. So clear thinking, and people thought, oh, Kieran, he's just a genius on a horse. Deeply thought through.
Mick Cannon rode a number of top-class winners for you.
Yeah.
People always say about him, very few mistakes, right place, right time. Was that?
Yeah, great jockey. I mean, great. And Murta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great jockeys.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say that Johnny would tell you how great he was more than Mick Cannon?
Yeah, Mick didn't say very much, unless it was, you know, do I get an extra 5%?
Oh, God. And obviously Frankie, who gave you your first St. Ledger winner.
First St. Ledger winner, yeah. Only St. Ledger winner.
Yeah. And longevity, he's been around a long time,
and
Frankie.
He came in the parade ring, right? Well, he looks at the wine stocks, he says, your trainer, he's used Scobie Breesley. And he started to name all these old men. And now he's come to me, and I'll win it for you, don't worry. It's finally come to me.
At last.
But the names he went through. Charlie Smirk was it.
Fred Archer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've had Ryan, obviously, in recent years, and we've been with him a long time now.
Yeah, he's very intelligent. That doesn't mean that I only like to talk to intelligent people, but no, he's so dedicated, so organised. Yeah, we've had a great rapport.
Yeah. Are there any outstanding names that you want to mention? Any horses that we want to ask about? I mean, we've covered. We feel we've covered sort of the principal ones.
A touch on Crebensis, your single champion hurdle winner.
Well, he won the Triple Crown of hurdling.
He did, the
That's
Triple
what
Crown.
They call it, yeah.
Yeah. Is jump racing something you like, for example?
Yeah. Well, I had a year and a half at Tom Jones.
Yeah.
When he had some proper jumpers.
Yeah.
Just before I then left him, started training on my own. So I enjoyed the jumpers, and I learned a lot about them because the Duke came in as the assistant's assistant to assist, and Dunwoody came and rode him schooling off. The Duke would let him off because he'd worked out Mohammed might just get sucked into this jumping game. Yeah. It was a one-off thing because I think Stroud said. That's right. Yeah. Stroud said that Crebensis, I think he should go jumping. So and I said, yeah. Well, you can go jump in here. We got good schooling grounds up on the links that I know of. right? Because Stroud wanted jumpers.
Yeah.
Mohammed wasn't interested in them. And there were a few for a few years, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think even
Yeah.
The
Munax,
Duke-
didn't even Munax run over jumps for in Sheikh Mohammed's colours,
Yeah.
didn't he?
Yeah.
So they did have a little dip.
So, so he was fun. He was fun.
He probably had the top strike rate at the Cheltenham Festival of any leading trainer.
That's a good point. Yeah. Well, if I finish by saying that if anyone had said to Steve and I about 20 years ago
This is true.
that you'd sit and talk and reminisce with Sir Michael Stoute about some of the great horses over the years, I think I would have said to people, you're crazy, because this is a genuine pleasure and privilege to have spent this time chatting to you about those horses, those people. So thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
And
Pleasure.
here's to the next Group 1 winner.
Arc winner in 2048. Whatever it is.
And as they begin these descent at the top of the hill, coming down to the halfway stage, and it's Riberetto in the lead. Riberetto the leader from Silver Season in second. Shergar spot his white face there in third, the grey. Leicester Piggott going well in fourth, then Church Parade 5, Scintillating Area 6 and Sheer Grid 7. Then comes King's General 8, Linda Gold 9 and Sunday Bill 10. Then comes Al Nass with Robolino making up ground up on the outside. But it's still Riberetto that leads as they begin the descent to Tatton Corner. It's Riberetto in the lead from Sunday Bill. Shergar there on the left of the picture up on the outside. Then Scintillating Air just in behind them. And behind Scintillating Air is Church Parade. Then comes Shotgun. Then comes King's General in the field, well and truly strung out as they swing into the home straight and having round Tatton Corner. And the white face of Shergar moves up to dispute the lead with Riberetto. Shergar, Riberetto from Silver Season and Scintillating Air. Then behind these comes Shotgun and Wallace Swinburne is committed. He's going for home, and Shergar is going on and going clear. The odds-on favourite clear in the Derby with just over 2 furlongs left to go. It's Shergar in the lead and clear from Silver Season. Leicester Piggott coming very wide on Shotgun, but they've got 2 furlongs left to race, under 2 furlongs to go, and it's Shergar in the lead. Shergar from Scintillating Air in second place. Church Parade is third, Shotgun 4th, then comes Glint of Gold, but Shergar is well clear with a furlong to go. Shergar a long way clear of his rivals. Shergar in the lead and clear. Wallace Swinburne riding him out, going for home ahead of Glint of Gold is second, Scintillating Air is third, Shotgun is 4th, but coming up to the line, Shergar is going to win it at the line. Shergar is the winner, very easy winner. Glint of Gold second, Scintillating Air third, Shotgun. It's Nomrud in the lead then, as they come to the top of the hill, just over a mile left to race, and Nomrud leading from far away Dancer in second. Racing third is Nisnas, then 4th on the inside is Wise Counsellor. After him on the outer is Shahrastani. Behind these comes Arakar, followed by Alan Malone and Flash of Steel and Matchcore. Dancing Brave still down towards the rear, round towards the halfway stage then, and they're starting the descent to Tattenham Corner with Cirque in last place, and it's Nomrud who leads the pack. From Nisnas in second and far away Dancer. Behind these comes Shahrastani. They've just got over 5 furlongs left to race. Nomrud, far away Dancer, Nisnas, Shahrastani, Wise Counsellor, then again Shahrud next to the rails. Just in behind these comes Mashcore. Cirque is still the back marker, and here they start continuing the descent with 5 furlongs left to go. And at this stage, Dancing Brave is still towards the rear. Cirque is last of all, but it's Nomrud who leads. From far away Dancer second, then comes Nisnas in third. Now comes Shahrastani making ground on the outside, and from here on in, Dancing Brave in the pink cap, not in the picture, is into unknown territory as the pace quickens at last in the ever-ready Derby. 3 furlongs to go, it's Nomrud in the lead. Dancing Brave on the extreme left starts to pick up ground. 2.5 to go. Nomrud, far away Dancer, Shahrastani with the white face comes there strongly. Then again, Dancing Brave is on the extreme left, starting to motor. But oh, so much to do. 1.5 left to do it. Shahrastani goes for home, but here, powering down the centre of the track, is the red-hot favourite Dancing Brave inside the final furlong. Shahrastani from Dancing Brave. Dancing Brave closing with every stride. Shahrastani just hold on at the line. Shahrastani from Dancing Brave. Mashcore just trying a photo with this Nisnas far away Dancer there.
Dutch Gold who leads them uphill still as they approach the final 9 furlongs, attended on the inside by the Great Gatsby. The pink cap in third of Alberto Giacometti, on the outside of Brian Boru, the same jacket, the blue cap. Then on the outside, Balestrini, so Aidan O'Brien horses tracking the pace. Refuse to Bend tracks that trio with Lundy's Lane and Franklin Gardens. Kris Kin taking the brave route up the fence from Strength and Honour, who's on the outside of Greycross. Alam Shah in midfield, the green colours from Unigold. Then Shield, Dunhill Star has 6 behind. Let Me Try Again, who's lost his position from Prince Nureyev. Also on the outside, Magistretti has lost ground. And then Summerland and Norse Dancer will have to pass them all to win. They begin the turn and the descent towards Tattenham Corner. And it's the Great Gatsby by a neck from Dutch Gold. In third place, Balestrini on the outside of Alberto Giacometti. Brian Boru didn't come down the hill as well as some. Refuse to Bend and Lundy's Lane come next from Franklin's Gardens. Alan Shah is poised in midfield, about 8 lengths off the pace. In 8th or 9th on the outside of Kris Kin. Greycross improving for Frankie Dettori from Shield, and Strength and Honour and the stragglers are turning in a Magistretti and Norse Dancer. They begin to increase the tempo with 3.5 furlongs to travel. And it's the Great Gatsby in the pink jacket, pressed on the outside by Dutch Gold. All of a sudden, these two have got a break on Balestrini. Some of the big guns behind are struggling. Kris Kin refused to bend, can't pick up. One that's making ground is Adam Shah, but inside the final couple of furlongs, it's the Great Gatsby who has them all at full stretch. From Dutch Gold, then back in third place, Balestrini. Relentless headway from Kris Kin. Kieran Fallon now asking that horse for maximum effort. Norse Dancer and Adam Shah trying to join in. The Great Gatsby for Pat Edry, but Kris Kin for Kieran Fallon runs down the leader. Adam Shah tries hard to close, but Kris Kin will win the Vodafone Derby. Kris Kin for Kieran Fallon and Sir Michael Stoute. Close for second, the Great Gatsby and Adam Shah.
They've gone the best part of 3.5 furlongs, and Meath is the leader from Northlight, who's handy. 2 lengths away in third is Hazy View. Percussionist has had a good run up in fourth. Let the Lion Roar is there, just preceded by American Post. Then out wider is Pucker. They're followed by Gatwick, and then coming again as they start to run downhill now. Further back in the field, Frankie on the inside here on Snow Ridge from Al Shadi, then Salford City. And at the rear of the field now is Karen McAvoy on Rule of Law. They start to run downhill. Less than 6 furlongs to race in the Derby, and the leader on the inside is Mead. By half a length, the Northlight has been there throughout. 1.5 lengths then to in third, Hazy View from American Post, who's beautifully poised. Further back is Pucker, who's right up there as well. Then Percussionist being hard ridden. Further back in the field then is Gatwick, and here comes Frankie on the outside on Snow Ridge. Then followed by Salford City, and well back in the field then is coming again, but heads a turn for home in the Derby, and Northlight moves up to grab the lead from Meath. Here's American Post on the outside from Hazy View. Pucker right down the outside, then Gatwick Percussionist. There's Frankie on the outside on Snow Ridge, but it's Kieran Fallon in front on Northlight, the far side at the 2. American Post is coming at him. They're followed by Hazy View right down the outside. Now is Frankie on Snow Ridge and Salford City, Rule of Law, but it's Northlight who strikes for home with a furlong to go. He's 2 in front of American Post Percussionist. Salford City trying hard to wear him down, but this horse is lengthening well. Northlight 2 or 3 in front, flying to the death is Rule of Law, but the winner of the Derby is Northlight. Second, Rule of Law, tight third. Let the Lion Roar.
Being taken along by At First Sight, who's now moved through to lead Asmiel, who is now Keen under restraint in second place, with disputing that position Bullet Train, and out wider Midas Touch, and also out wider is Ted Spread, who's posted a little deep at the moment. Alzir in the red cap settles midfield, with Jan Vermeer moving forward on the outside of Workforce. Jan Vermeer now moving through into 6th or 7th, with Rewilding also encouraged to take slightly closer order. Hot Prospect, coordinated cut towards the rear of the field with Buzzword, so the pace is rather better now as At First Sight reaches the highest point of the course and prepares to begin the descent. At First Sight with Bullet Trained well positioned in second place. In third is Asmiel ahead of Midas Touch. Ted Spread already being ridden along on the outer of Alzir. Jan Vermeer descends in about 7th place on the outside of Workforce. Rewilding is also in that little cluster as well, as At First Sight kicking on down the hill begins to inject some pace and has gone 5 to 6 lengths clear. Rewilding still towards the back with Hot Prospect, Buzzword and Coordinated Cut. So turning back towards home. At First Sight leads by 5 lengths. Bullet Train is ridden in second. Midas Touch travelling smoothly in third from Asmiel. Jan Vermeer also travelling smoothly, just needs to push out underneath Alzia. So At First Sight is giving a bold sight. It's still about 6 lengths clear. Workforce has moved through to head the chase. Jan Vermeer is back in third but out in the clear. Workforce trying to run down At First Sight. Jan Vermeer has 3 lengths to find on Workforce in third. Then Alzia behind these Midas Touch. Workforce has taken over from At First Sight and is clear in the Derby. Jan Vermeer being pressed now by Rewilding for the minor honours, but surely they're all chasing the shadow of Workforce. About 5 lengths clear. He won his first classic yesterday with the Oaks. This one will complete the double for Ryan Moore. Workforce won the Investec Derby for Sir Michael Stoute, back in second place.